Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
Hey everyone, this is the Look Back podcast with Sam and Maddie, brought to you by drroto.com. Get your daily prescription of fantasy sports. Maddie, how are you? I think you know how I'm feeling after the Steelers finally pull off a win for Big Ben at home.
I am excited for you. Big Ben needed that exit.
Yes.
I'm happy for him. It's time for him to move on.
Yeah, it's time. You know, he had a good run, 18 seasons. It is what it is. I'm grateful for the championships that he won us, but I definitely think, you know, it is time. It was brutal to watch. There were some moments where you're like, oh, Ben's so slow. But we still got the win, you know? I have to just think of the silver lining right now and not think about the fact that we have to figure out what to do at quarterback in the offseason. That's going to stress me out enough.
That's going to be rough.
I'm just going to live in the moment. We got the win. Ben got the win. Najee Harris ended up jumping into the end zone at the last minute to save a lot of people's fantasy weeks and hopefully got the championship as a result of that. I did wait until the official win before I hung up my brand new Steelers sign because I didn't want to jinx it. So I waited for the win before I did that.
You've got the Najee jersey on too.
I got the jersey, got my 22.
You're a real fan over there.
I also have this really crazy custom jacket. It's got pictures of all the players on the lining.
You're a diehard.
Yeah.
You were a diehard.
I need to send you the link to these people. Maybe I think they've got Ravens one that you could get done too. So
I'm probably going to have that. I think next week you should come in a Steelers jersey and I'll come in a Ravens jersey and we'll just make a thing out of it.
We will. We'll have a party. It's going to be fun. I can be positive. We'll probably end up losing.
And I mean, for what?
Hey, you know, it's the last
rooting for the Jags this week. Rooting for the Jags.
Yeah, you know, if the Jags can beat the Colts, it gives our teams hope. It's a bleak hope, but we can hope for it. We've got Albert joining us, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, saying good evening.
What's up, Albert?
What is up?
Did you see the guy who one of our viewers tweeted at me and said, if Ben Roethlisberger scores a touchdown, is that a thick six? And I wanted to say yes.
Actually, maybe.
It could be argued.
You know, the argument is there. I definitely appreciate the effort in trying to get that little thing for him, but even the last touchdown, it was a run. So you know, it is what it is. I did appreciate how much Rodgers in the Eli cast and the Manning cast was saying, he's like, you know what? No, just Hail Mary it. Like as soon as they got the ball back and they're like, so what do we do? Do they just play it conservative? They're gonna run the ball. And Rodgers is like, no, just old school Ben, just like, you know, pump fake and just throw it down for a Hail Mary. I'm like, I appreciate the sentiment, but I also know that could end up getting real bad real quick.
And honestly, I wouldn't put it past him to like message Ben and just be like, you should have just Hail Married it.
Oh, I'm sure that he sent the text message as soon as he was off the cast. I was like, you should have thrown it.
I'm sure he did.
No. Thumbs down. No.
I do like how Peyton called him out and was just like, hey, you got to stop talking about the toe. Like everybody knows you were faking it. It's over with. It's done.
I know. I also kind of like that, you know, that Rodgers is so into his every week being on the Pat McAfee show. And like he's got his like setup and he's just like almost like a regular podcaster with how much he is on that show.
Yes.
But he intentionally changed up his background for the Manning cast because it's like, this is going to be different than my podcast. I was like, really? You went to that extra effort to just change your background and your camera setup there, Rodgers?
I do appreciate it though. I'm just not a fan of him. So I don't know. And each time I get to see like more of a personal view of him, I think maybe it's because my view on him is so tarnished that it's just like, I just feel annoyed.
Yeah.
Albert, I did face Jamar Chase. I did.
So does that mean that you lost the championship because of it? Or did you manage to still win?
In one league, I lost.
I
faced him in 2 leagues.
Yeah. I had him in a league, and so I was very happy with the results.
I'm sure you were. Sorry.
I
was just like, I was attempting to watch the Ravens game all the way through. And then I was like, all right, I'm catching the rest on Game Pass. And I came back and I was just like, my brain was exploding. Yes, Will. My brain did explode after tonight's game. That was rough.
Was it brutal?
Was rough. Yeah. I'll tell
brutal.
you, yeah, absolutely brutal. We do have to acknowledge the thick six, and I have a thick assist of the week this week that I want to give.
Yes.
So
let's give the awards out. I love giving out those awards.
I love
You
giving
have
out
the floor.
awards, and we're going to start off the podcast on a good note. So center Garrett Bradbury for the Vikings gets my thick assist of the week, because I don't know if you guys saw this, but it was a short little dump pass that got broken up with a tackle, and he makes the most athletic move, dives and gets a shoelace catch, and then runs for 21 yards. And it takes 4 guys to tackle him. 4 guys. A center's just sprinting downfield, and it was beautiful.
I love it.
Yes, Albert, this is what I'm talking about. He is my thick assist winner of the week. It was absolutely beautiful.
Next season, we have to have graphics ready for when we give out these awards, so I can click a button and it says the thick assist of the week, and it just like, bam, jumps up.
It's beautiful.
Have to work on
just
the texture.
The pure athleticism. I mean, kudos. Also, kudos to Dan Campbell, because the man didn't attempt 1, but he attempted 2 offensive linemen, thick sixes, and I respect it. It. So the thick six of the week was the only one we had. Taylor Decker catches it in the end zone, and he was defended. There was 2 defenders right on his tail, and it was a good catch.
Yeah.
Looked like a tight end catching it.
Yeah.
He had to
do a
little jog into the end zone. It was beautiful. All around, beautiful. Love the big guys.
Love it. I feel like, with this little burst of them, I feel like defenses are going to have to be more on the lookout for these thick sixes. This is going to be worked into the scheme.
I'm telling you, it should be. It should be.
Sorry, Knox is trying to interrupt our podcast right now.
Oh, Knox.
You're not. Just silly cat.
I know. My dog never wants attention until I'm on a podcast.
Anyways, let's talk about other players that won people their championships, because let's stay positive. I mean, we're about to be out of football. We're out of fantasy football. Next week is the last week of the season. Let's just keep it positive. Let's talk back about Jamar Chase. I know it's brutal that you were against him, but he had an absolutely insane game. 11 catches on 12 targets, 266 yards and 3 touchdowns. And it was hilarious in the press conference when they let him know that he had more receiving yards than Mahomes had throwing.
3 yards. I didn't get to see him. What did he say?
So the guy says it and he's like, no, that's not right. And then the guy was like, wait, really? And he said, oh shit. And then he's like, oh, I mean, I'm so sorry. And he was just like, he was really taken aback. He had no idea. It was awesome.
That's an insane stat though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's worthy of being in like a Twitter or Instagram bio. Definitely. I think. I loved when they were talking to Burrow and he said, you know that meme that just like, F it, Jamar's down there somewhere. And I don't know why I laughed so hard at that.
Because it resonates so much with us and how active we are on the Twitter and on the memes and all these things as soon as news or lines are said. And so when they get one right in the middle of the interview, it's golden.
I will tell you, the league that I lost in, the guy was starting Jamar Chase and Adams.
Oh, dang.
So it was just like, why am I playing?
See, I was against Adams in this matchup. It was a really tight matchup, actually. So I had Rodgers, he had Adams and Aaron Jones, and I had AJ Dillon. So that was the one thing that kind of like teetered in my favor, was that Dillon ended up having such a productive week as a just slightly over Jones. And that kind of helped edge me out. And then, the Jamar Chase on top of that was just...
I'm happy for you.
I'm so happy. I didn't expect to win this league because I was dead last season. So
the comeback,
0 to hero.
The comeback is strong. I love it.
Yeah.
Burrow had a great game.
He did.
Because of Jamar Chase.
Because of Jamar Chase, yes. But he also had a good game because the rest of his pass catchers also did their jobs very well. They were all very efficient. And I think that performance kind of answered a lot of the questions that we had before the matchup, which was, okay, the Bengals have been able to do really well, like last week against half of a Ravens team is what we kind of called it, because so many people were out, and they were able to obviously have a fantastic game, but I feel like that has an asterisk next to it because it wasn't against a full-fledged Ravens offense and defense. Like, they didn't have everybody. So to me, I was like, I still need to see it. This isn't Like, you can't start calling them winners. You can't start calling them anything amazing because you need to have the proper matchup. So this week, I think, and especially with how Kansas City's defense has stepped up as of late, this was a much better test to me for the Bengals. I still think that they need to be tested against a full Ravens team, though.
I agree, because the Chiefs' defense has been playing better, but they don't change their defense to accommodate any offense.
Mm-hmm.
They go out and they play the same thing. And yes, it worked for a little bit, but I don't think that the defense played that great in this game, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I mean, they were better than they had been earlier in the season, but they have had better games in between. I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah. They didn't try to adjust at all.
Mm-hmm.
They just turned around and they laid down and got ran over at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely brutal. But I mean, in terms of fantasy output for their stars, I think another thing that was a bit underwhelming was Tyreek Hill's numbers at the end of the game. Barely scraping 7 points, 7 catches on 10 targets, no touchdowns, only 40 yards. Absolutely brutal. But in what scenario would you ever bench Tyreek Hill anyways?
I mean, you don't. He's Tyreek Hill. And
Yes.
it wasn't on the offense. They just didn't get the ball.
No.
I mean, that was beautiful game management by the Bengals.
Definitely. Albert saying the Chiefs should have went to a zones defense instead of a man-to-man.
The hard thing with that is, if you're in a zone defense, you're still mismatched. I mean, you're either going to have to come down and try to stop a run, or you're going to have to go man on man and cross your fingers and hope that one of their many weapons doesn't take off, because it's a mismatch.
Yeah.
It was the same thing. The only way that the Chiefs could have done a better job, I feel like, is to try to have the ball longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It didn't work out in their favor.
No. And that's, how the cookie crumbles in this one. But, I also love that, the Bengals did play all 4 quarters. They did not let up throughout the entire game. And I think that is what's going to continue to bring them success, is when they don't take their foot off the gas, especially in our division. I feel like each team has been guilty of it before. I know the Steelers have definitely been guilty of it, where we get up early, and we kind of did it today too, where we take our foot off the gas for just a half second. But you can't do that with any of these teams in the AFC North. We are far too gritty that you just can't let up.
And I would argue that that's a big reason why the Ravens have recently had success over Pittsburgh, is solely because the Ravens are like the cockroaches who won't die. They're those guys that are like in celebrities' DMs, just shooting their shot. Like, that's how I feel about the Ravens. Like, the Ravens have no concept of understanding that they might lose a game until it's actually lost.
Wait, are you saying that it's like me shooting my shot every time I get into Chris Evans' DMs, and I'm just like, your dog is super cute.
Please know I'm alive. Yes.
It's okay that you're a Patriots fan. We can still be friends.
I will convert for you. That's a thing. People talk about religion. It's more of fandom for me.
I thought you meant convert teams. I was like, I will not be a Patriots
fan. Oh, no, that's what I meant.
Oh.
Not even for Chris Evans.
Like,
wow.
These colors don't run. Like, no.
You would have to get a whole new wardrobe.
Yeah, I'd have to literally change all of my clothes and half of like the stuff in my house. I literally have like snuck in little bits of yellow and black throughout my entire house, so that it's like an adult version of like a giant, I call it a Sam cave because it's not a man cave, it's a Sam cave. The whole house has just got these little essence of Steelers everywhere.
I love that. I love that.
I have a giant yellow chair.
The best part is you live in California.
I know. Everyone's like,
you guys have 2 NFL teams. That is neither of them.
Yes, I've had my friends come over before, and we're sitting in my living room. They're like, "You're a Steelers fan, right?" I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Yep, that's what I was getting." But it's like the most subtle thing.
Way to pick up on the vibes. Black and yellow, black and yellow.
The vibes out there. We got Jonathan joining us. Danger, we appreciate you tuning in.
Hello, Danger.
Saying Deontay's touchdown secured his 12-year running home league victory. Never rooted for the Steelers so hard. We appreciate you rooting for us. Danger. We
Why do I
appreciate
feel like there was sarcasm attached to that too? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he enjoys rooting for the Steelers at all. But hey, I'll take what I can get, and that's totally fine. But yes, I think that the floor for the majority of the Steelers players that everyone was hoping would get them some form of points met the floor. I mean, Deontay did just fine with just about 13 fantasy points. He had a touchdown. He had 8 catches and 31 yards, so that was just enough. But there was a lot of tweets that I saw people saying, I need 30 from Deontay and I need 20 from Pat Freiermuth. And I'm just like, I mean,
it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I never want to say things aren't going to happen, but that's a lot. I needed 11 from Najee and I got 11 plus some. So
I was going to say you got a little bit more than that. You know what was wild for me to watch? Tom Brady. And it's crazy to me that he ranks so high in what he finished as far as his output.
Mm-hmm.
And if you watch that game, you were mortified if you started Tom Brady.
It was worrisome. I mean, thankfully he was able to get just over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, but his interception, there was just a lot of messiness that was frustrating. And I think that the whole team was frustrated, which we saw when Antonio Brown had a little tantrum and ran off the field. And then we come to find out later, it's not that he wasn't getting playing time, but that he didn't want to go into the game. They were down and he didn't want to even go on the field when they were down. That's not a good teammate. You just don't do that. So Bruce Arians said, if you want to go, you can go. And that's when he decided to strip and leave, which really had the feelings of like someone that, like a fan that jumped onto the field and was having their moment. And the security was like, oh, I don't want to tackle you. Do I have to tackle you? Am I supposed to?
They said security thought that it was a fan. And we're attempting to treat, I don't know if that's true or not. I read that on Twitter. Could be false news. I'm not sure.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, wait a minute. Because it's confusing. It's like, it's kind of like when you see someone wearing something somewhere that they're not expecting it. Like when you're wearing a Halloween costume in like May, you're like, what are you doing? You clearly have some party to go to. Like you're out of place. He was out of place being shirtless in the end zone. Definitely allowed.
I do feel like, because I've heard a few different reports, some going on his side, I would say, or defending him to an extent. And my thing is, if it happened the way that they expressed that it happened, saying like he was injured, he didn't feel comfortable going out on the field. One, you declare that before the game, I would think, right?
Yeah.
And 2, if that was the case and you felt that uncomfortable and they told you to leave, you're not welcome on the sideline anymore, that you exit in a more classy fashion if you want to play football in the NFL.
If you want to play again for another team and you have this, he has the era about him, and we know that he cannot stay with a team. He's had so many off the field issues, like that kind of, he's got these buzzwords of an attitude problem all around him. So if you're having this issue and it's really not about you, then be gracious in that moment of leaving and just walk out, but don't create a spectacle of yourself. And then I guess he was at a basketball game tonight too. So he was like,
he released a rap song last night.
And then he released a rap song as well. So maybe don't add to the madness if you want to be taken seriously.
And I feel like we just watched him retire. I did feel bad because you could see when they asked Brady about it, Brady was just like at a loss for words almost. He was just like,
well, he also vouched for him, and he pulled for him to get to New England, and then he pulled for him to come.
He let him live in his home.
He let him live in his home in Tampa. So he's clearly done a lot for this guy, but it sounds like, and I'm at least from visually speaking, it seems like Antonio Brown has a lot more issues going on that need to be dealt with on a much more serious level. A lot of people have said, oh, clearly he hasn't been the same since he had that big hit from Vontaze Burfict years ago, and he's CTE. And it's, you know what? There could be a really good case for there being some additional issue because of the position he's played and the hits that he's taken.
Yeah.
I hope that he gets the help that he desperately needs, because it's just very sad to see someone who's had so much talent, so many accolades, literally take their career, wad it up, swoosh, throw it in the toilet, and then just watch it flush. Like
it's not just a good time.
No, not a good time at all. It's just sad all around. Let's talk about more happy stuff. Let's talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown and what a crazy good receiver he is, and for dynasty purposes, how happy you are if you have him on your team and how much you're cringing if you don't have him on your dynasty team, because he was fantastic this weekend with 8 catches, 11 targets, 111 yards, and a touchdown. I think that he is a very nice bright spot for the Lions, and it's a good hope for them for their future as well.
It is. And you know what? I like the Lions mentality because you can tell that they're having fun with the game while they're out there. They're just enjoying themselves. But that makes me excited for next year. And honestly, I hadn't really considered them. But after this year's performance in redraft, I'm like, hello.
Oh, I feel like he's also
On my
someone
radar for
that
sure.
in redraft, probably by the time we have some more rookies to start talking about, more hype goes into more drafts, he might
He's gonna
slide
fall.
down. He's going to
Yeah.
fall in ADP, and you'll be able to grab him for a really good price, and he's going to be a fantastic piece for you to have on your team. So I'm excited
Absolutely.
for him and his value. Another name I want to mention that's in the top 5 that, for dynasty purposes, you got to look for bright spots somewhere. And maybe the Jets have one in Braxton Barrios, because he's shown up very well the last couple weeks. He had 8 catches this weekend on 12 targets, 65 yards and a touchdown. I mean, you love to see any bright spot come out of, what feels like nowhere, but there had to be something good coming out of the Jets. Like, you can't be behind this much and not have someone be getting all the fantasy points to try and make up for lost time,
Yeah. I just don't know that he's going to be successful in that offense.
I don't know either, but we're talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's on the Lions, they're in such a rebuild, and it's going to continue to be a rebuild. They'll be playing from behind.
But they're at least, getting creative with their offense and protecting the players. And the Jets is just kind of a free-for-all. There is no system with the Jets.
I would argue that a team in a bigger free fall than the Jets would be the Jags right now. But it is close. It's splitting hairs.
I feel the Jags, I feel like it's the Jags and the Giants. That's the two that I feel like are in the free fall. Yeah.
Because
the
one
Jets
doesn't have a coach right now.
That's true.
At least the other one has a coach.
That is true. But I mean, for how long?
And for how long?
Joe Judge was really, I was like, are you trying to get fired? Are you trying to be unlikable? Did you see his post-game interview?
No. Tell me.
He said, oh, I can't even emulate it. You're going to have to go back and watch. But basically he was saying, I have previous players who are making more money calling me daily saying that they want to be a Giant. And I'm like, who? Can I please have some references? I don't believe you.
Sounds like a scored X right there. Like,
yeah. we have
so
a lot of guys
be with me, you don't even know.
We have a lot of guys that are going to be free agents next year that are in my office every day saying, I want to be a Giant.
Let's see those receipts there, Joe. Because none of us believe you.
I don't believe you. I don't.
Goodness. Albert saying Barrios is going to be the slot receiver with Crowder leaving as a free agent. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that definitely makes sense. I just feel like when you see sparks of talent, especially towards the end of the season, because of these desperation moments that teams get into, I think that we can't forget about those in the off season, just because later that's going to be a flyer wide receiver that you're going to be in one of these weak situations where you need to throw someone in there. And if you've seen it before, you've seen a glimmer before, at least you know what the potential is when you slot that person in.
Notate it in the back of your head, because they're always going to be there, I feel like.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that Braxton Barrios is going to be, a top 20 play next season. I'm just saying these are names that you need to keep remembering, because these teams are going to need to lean on them, and you're probably going to have to lean on them as well in your fantasy matchups.
And we have an extended season from now on. So
we do. We have a lot of weeks. And at least the way that we've seen this season work out, and maybe next year will be different. Hopefully, knock on wood, if we are done with COVID by then, please let us be done with this. But the way that we saw teams having to, adjust for the longer season, but also with so many players out, I don't think that we saw any load management situations that I was previously predicting we might have. Maybe in a post-COVID era, that is something that future us will have to deal with. But at least for right now, it looks like everyone was playing for every single week, as opposed to what we thought we might have been seeing.
It seemed like that. I feel like the load management that we're going to see most is going to be in preseason from now on because of how many injuries we had this preseason.
Yep.
I think that coaches are going to dial it back next year.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. I mean, just the amount of injuries we had at running back this season as well. For me, looking forward to how I'm going to draft and redraft next season, I'm depending on what spots I get in drafts, I'm less and less likely to be stacking up my running back positions early and hoping for maybe a later draft pick so I can just get a top receiver and then get like a second or third, probably a third round running back, because I was burned by too many double running back stacks where everyone got hurt and I was just like flipping tables. I have nobody
in every league. That's how I felt. But still, I've been asked this on so many podcasts that I've been on. Are you going to change the way that you draft? And
in some of my leagues, because I have enough drafts, I have enough leagues that I can try it.
I don't know. I haven't decided.
There's gonna be one or two redraft leagues that I do next year where I try to not do it. Because I have kept the same draft strategy for a very long time. So it's important to me to try other strategies because I want to make sure that I'm not being too one-sided even in my analysis or the advice that I'm giving, because if there is a better strategy and I want to try it, I want to try it. And at least if I try it and I know it didn't work based on these positions, then at least I tried it.
That's true.
And I do so many mock drafts. This past year, I think I did the most mock drafts that I'd ever done. And I did mock drafts.
I don't ever do mock drafts.
You don't? It makes me feel so much better to do them.
It gives me too much anxiety.
I do them with people that are, other analysts that are throughout the Twitter sphere. And at least that way as well, I know people are taking the mock draft more seriously than just the auto-generated ones. But even with those, it's kind of helpful to see where certain players land. That way you can try different things. Albert jumping in saying, I went 0 RB this year. How did that work out for you, Albert? Let us know.
Yeah.
Throw in
and
there.
I will say, like, even though a majority of my running backs I lost before the season even started, my top running backs, it just happened that way.
Oh, yeah.
And I still made it to the championship in several leagues. So it stinks, but then at the same time, it's like, but I'm still here. I'm still fighting, No. I will say there's one league that I'm in that I don't know that I can play next year just because this year they took a tight end in the first round. And I was like, you're screwing up my draft.
You're ruining my life. What are you doing?
You're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong. You're drafting wrong. Just do better. Let's talk about other running backs too, since we're on the subject, because a lot of the ones that were in the top this week were not necessarily at the top running backs for the week. Rashad Penny saved a lot of people's weeks if they managed to be so thoughtful in playing him the way that,
Guess who did not start Rashad Penny?
Was he on your bench?
Yeah,
but you must have had better options or options that you felt like were going to vastly outperform him. So.
And I really did not think that he was going to have the week that he had. 170 yards,
2 touchdowns,
25 carries. And I think Danger put this up. Did Rush prove enough to force Pete out next year? And he says, I don't think either one of them are going to be there next year.
I think that's a really spicy argument, but I could totally see it happening. I feel like Russell wants a change of scenery. And I also feel like it's time for Pete Carroll to move on. What I think is most likely is that Pete stays and Russell moves. I think it's less likely to see them both leave, but it also wouldn't totally shock me either.
I agree. I for sure think Russ is gone no matter what. And I don't think that it's a Seattle decision. I think Russ has made his mind and he's done.
Yeah, I think it's his decision, definitely. And I think that, whether or not it's a quick decision when all the free agency moves start to happen, if this is going to be one of the first dominoes to fall or it's going to be the last day and we hear about it, could be drama filled or it could just be over very quickly. But I do think that he is on the move.
I do too. And if he's smart, he tries to make that happen immediately so he can spend the rest of the offseason trying to form the team that he wants around him, just like Brady did. I mean, you have that power. You're not getting any younger. I mean, if you're going to make the move, pull LeBron James and try to get whoever you want there and make it happen.
I think pull a page out of the TB12 book and the way that he did it, because when he made the move, like you said, he made it immediately, started making the connections, got all the phone numbers of everyone that he needed to, and said, hey, I'm making my team. Gronk got his phone call very quickly. And he created the team that he wanted. I think that would be really smart of Wilson to do as well.
Good for you, Albert. 3 out of 4.
Nice.
All right. I'll consider it.
With that, you'll consider it. Speaking of the Seahawks, though, I mean, I was very low on DK Metcalf this week. I felt like he was going to be a big bust, but he did manage to save you with 2 touchdowns, despite only having 4 catches, which I think is brutal. So I don't think that this is fully an amazing stat line. The 2 touchdowns definitely saved him, because 4 catches for 45 yards normally would not give you that many points.
And we haven't seen anything out of Metcalf solely because Russell hasn't been there ready to play. He just hasn't been in it. I told people not to start Metcalf this week just because I didn't believe it at all.
No, me too. No, it didn't make sense. The way that he has performed just very consistently over the entire season as a result of just the style of play there in Seattle. It just hasn't made any sense. I think this offseason and this week, I'm not going to have my stock market article come out tomorrow, but it's going to come out the following week. And it's going to be kind of a recap of the entire season, like notes to take forward into next year.
I'm excited about that.
So I might end up making a much longer article because I have 2 weeks to write it. So might be a novel.
And it's going to be juicy.
Should be juicy because there'll be takes like, players I'm just not going to draft at all next season based on this season entirely. Obviously, off-season moves could change a lot of things for certain players, but there's also a lot of takeaways based on the way that teams had to adjust that just make me more excited for other players going forward into next season. Ramondre Stevenson had a fantastic game as well. He had 2 touchdowns for 107 yards and 19 carries. That was amazing. I think that the Patriots are going to be a real thorn in a lot of teams' sides going into the playoffs. I think that they're going to stick around. They're just looking super consistent right now.
I do too. And I mean, okay, we're taking the opponent into consideration, but at the same time, that offense looks so composed. The defense looked like they weren't even trying.
It was just, it looked all too easy. It looked all too clinical. Bill Belichick offense, defense, everything was just, it was kind of like watching the San Antonio Spurs from a couple years ago where everything was just like clinical. It's like, okay, yeah, they're winning again, and it's just
systematic,
very systematic, very, very
everyone
clean.
was doing what they expected.
Making Mac Jones just look like a crazy veteran presence with just that level of consistency.
He had that composure too.
He
stepped into the pocket with that composure. The thing with this is typically we don't see New England players pop off. We just don't. That's not the Belichick way. He likes everything to be very spread out. If one thing's going really great, that's awesome. Let's try to throw this in and see where the momentum takes us. Can we execute that? That's just the way his style of coaching rolls. So to have a guy that's in the top 5 running back wise, that's amazing because typically we don't see that.
No, typically we don't. At least, especially in a
late season,
post Brady era as well, where we're not fully anticipating someone like Julian Edelman to save your fantasy week with over 100 yards and, at least 10 catches. And, there's less of like I know at least this is going to happen. We really don't know week in and week out exactly what's going to happen. It's even more of, a magic 8-ball moment of like, ask again later. And you keep looking, ask again later. And it's like, you won't tell me anything. It's just every single time. But no, I think that, end of the season Patriots that we're seeing, they're just looking very formidable, and I think that they're going to upset a lot of teams in the playoffs.
I think so too. Another running back who had a really good week was Singletary, and I was surprised by that. Not that he was going to have a good game. I just didn't think that he would have that type of game.
Yeah.
Against the Falcons, I thought they were going to throw.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like because of the weather, I feel like with Buffalo, you got to do a weather report. You just got to.
That's true.
It's just so brutally cold. And I saw the snow that was supposed to be there on the Sunday, and I was just like, you know what? If it's going to be a little bit blustery at all, it could give Singletary a bit of an edge. And it did. He had a really great game. He had 23 carries, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But it could have gone either way, just the way that they have been running the ball. And Josh Allen could have easily had those touchdowns as well himself. So it's hard to bank on him because he has Josh Allen to always have those rushing touchdowns.
And the offensive line is not very trustworthy. A lot of times when you're getting rushing touchdowns, it's because Josh Allen is scrambling.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And he's great at his scrambling. He's young. He's got the legs to do it. Like, keep going. I just keep getting jealous seeing Josh Allen make all these big running moves because he's huge, just like Ben. But gosh, the youth and the athleticism really do help someone out, don't they?
Albert, yes, Daryl did have a good game. And honestly, I don't know why the Chiefs don't utilize that more. I really don't. I feel like the Chiefs should utilize CEH and Williams the way that the Cowboys utilize Pollard and Elliott.
Yeah. I mean, CEH was out this week. Otherwise,
I know,
but at the same time, I didn't expect Daryl Williams to have as big of a game as he did with the 2 touchdowns, but
because
it is upsetting when they don't.
Offense. It is because they have a run blocking offensive line.
Yes, and how many times in the offseason and right before as soon as they drafted CEH, everyone said, oh, this is going to be the perfect fit because in this offense, any running back is going to have success because we were talking about names like Charkandrick West and all these other running backs from forever ago, it feels like, that had amazing success in this exact offense. But for some reason, they have the players to do it, and they've just turned the switch off on running.
Which I don't understand because they haven't turned off the RPO offense. They've just only executed the passing portion of it, which is wild because it really is. It really is. So hopefully they take this with them into the playoffs, into next season, and they really plan around it. But I would love to see a dual threat backfield.
I think in order to stay successful in the playoffs this year, they're going to have to continue to lean more on the running game just to stay competitive because, Tyreek Hill's going to continue to get double coverage. Travis Kelce's going to continue to see doubles as well. In order to open these things up, they're going to have to feed these running backs in order to,
open things. We watched it happen on the opposite side of the ball. How do you think the Bengals were able to do what they did?
Yeah.
I mean, they utilize their weapons. And another thing is, I don't know if it's just youth, like that younger generation, the Gen Z is all about like they just don't have any fear. But Burrow stays in the pocket. Burrow, everybody knows. Burrow knows. We know he's about to get laid out. And he will hang in there till the last second and just stay calm as a cucumber, knowing that he's about to get plowed.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but Patrick Mahomes does not have that in him.
No, he likes to run. He likes to move. I think that he's also probably someone that just in his personal life just doesn't sit still. And maybe that just is just something that permeates every single aspect. And that's why he has to continue to dance all over the field. But this is a great point, Albert. Kareem Hunt has been the only good running back since Andy Reid has been there. I mean, yes.
I'm not arguing.
We're definitely not going to argue against that. But it just also brings into question why aren't we still doing this? Like,
I will say,
backs are capable.
I feel like I draw everything back to the offensive line, but last year specifically, they had a really strong pass blocking offensive line. Now you have guys that their strength is a run blocking offensive line, which is perfect if you're running a lot of RPOs, specifically if you're going to run your RPO out with your quarterback out from under center. It gives your time or your line a little bit more time to get their footing, get their balance. Your quarterback has more time to make his reads. But for some reason, Andy Reid won't allow them to utilize running backs the way they should for that to be effective, which is really frustrating.
Yeah. Maybe just listen to our podcast and he would fix it.
I know. Honestly, I feel like at the beginning of the season, it was a lot of Patrick Mahomes making bad decisions. And now it's just like, what are we play calling? Are you guys just doing what Patrick's comfortable with? And that's what's finally made him comfortable? Because if that's the way it is, like, you have to learn that one person isn't the entire team.
Yes. And
I don't care what people say, he has yet to carry that team this year.
No, I actually agree with you completely. And on the opposite side, looking at how this game played out, I mean, Burrow leaned on his entire team to get this done. It wasn't just him carrying the team. Everyone was stepping up throughout. And I think, the teams that end up winning these championships are not because one person carried the team the entire way. You could say that for Aaron Rodgers doing a lot, but at the same time, this year he has leaned on a lot of different people to get the Packers to where they're at right now.
Same thing with Brady. I mean, like, who did Brady throw that last touchdown to? Anybody know him?
No.
Exactly. Like, that's my point. And Brady, like, I get that Brady's kind of the one that's like, this is what I want. This is how we're going to do it. But at the same time, he's playing for Bruce Arians. And he has more experience than a majority of the time I've been alive in that league. And he knows his players through and through. I feel like Patrick Mahomes was uncomfortable with where he was at this season and kind of threw a titty tantrum and said, this is what I'm comfortable with. So that's what they're giving him. And it's going to end up shooting them in the foot later on. It just is.
Cyril Grayson had a passing touchdown there with Brady. I'm apologizing now, Mr. Grayson, if I said your first name wrong. My bad.
Against the Jets.
You're new to me. Just absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, let's talk
I'm
about...
off my rant.
That wasn't a rant.
Sit down.
I feel like we've had other rants.
Yes.
Definitely had plenty. But I just want to pull up just the quarterbacks of the week and just see exactly who was the top performer. But of course, my iPad is not doing what I need him to do.
We have Joe Burrow, Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Kyle Murray.
Let's talk about Matt Stafford before we end the show, because I feel like we kind of have to talk about him. Not that we have to talk about him, but it's a little bit more than a little bit frustrating, considering that the Rams have all of these weapons. And unfortunately, to end the season, in the last 2 weeks, Matt Stafford has had 5 interceptions.
I'm going to answer that, but before we get going, I had it on passing leaders. Just so you know, like, overall, it was Burrow, Wilson, Brady, Prescott, and Jones were our top 5.
Perfect.
Okay, Matthew Stafford.
I know.
What? I don't feel like he had a great game. He made a couple of throws at the end. Good for you. Against a Ravens secondary that's very beat up. And that team was exhausted by the end. Honestly, they made some silly mistakes. And if Tyler Huntley could have not thrown an interception and the Ravens could have finished, they wouldn't have won that game.
No, I don't think that the Rams necessarily should have won that game, just the way they're playing. Like you were saying, with the Ravens being depleted in their secondary, you wouldn't expect to have just this many mistakes for Stafford. Like, they're playing down men. Why are you playing down?
He threw a pick 6 right off the bat.
Yeah, just like, it doesn't make any sense.
Like,
I mean,
and they weren't even they weren't disguised coverages. I mean, they were basic, just picks. They were bad decisions.
Yeah, just very bad decisions. Very, very sketchy. It just didn't make sense the way he's been looking these last couple of weeks. And for the Rams to really push all the chips onto the table and go so all in this season for a home Super Bowl, which is what everyone's been talking about, what everyone seems to want, it's just very upsetting to see so many mistakes happening at this point in the season. These feel like mistakes that should have happened in weeks 1 and 2, not in weeks 16 and 17.
I agree. And what's wild to me is that defense should absolutely be dominating, but it's not, because they can't get on the same page.
No.
When they're pulling people down, like, ideally you have Aaron on one side, and then I say this. Okay, I'm talking about against the Ravens, how you would have beat them. The Ravens can't handle a blitz. They can't. So what are you doing? It would take nothing for you to blitz a quarterback who doesn't have hardly any experience, bring everybody down. They are athletic enough to do it, but it's just like their front and their secondary can't get on the same page. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it felt also kind of, it just didn't make sense to give so much praise to Von Miller at the end for the sack that he did get at the end. It was one play. It was one play.
That was
at
it.
The very end. It's like, congratulations.
We didn't hear his name at all.
For showing up at the very end. It's like showing up at the last very moment of like a kid's party to do the magic, and the kids have been crying the entire party, and you're like, you saved the party. Thanks for being 2 hours late.
I mean, the left tackle, you guys know how I feel about our left tackle. And then we talk about our center was out literally minutes before the game, was suited up on the field, got incredibly ill on the sideline, and the center found out that he was starting 15 minutes before the game, 20 minutes before the game. So the fact is they should have just demolished the Ravens offensive line, and they didn't.
No.
That
should have won this game by multiple touchdowns.
They did. The Rams did not look good.
But
and OBJ is your glorified winner of this week. Yeah. I mean, I do think that they did a good job of shutting down Kupp, but OBJ, that's who you're going to bank on going into the playoffs?
I mean, and still, like, shutting down Cooper Kupp, I mean, is still an amazing fantasy day for any other average wide receiver, too. So, congratulations, you kept him to only 6 catches, 95 yards, just barely kept him under 100 yards and 1 touchdown. But I still wouldn't give Odell the receiver of the game award. It still has to go to Kupp to be able to still pull those stats despite being so well covered.
He was. And that touchdown that he had, that wasn't even his route. You could tell that he Cooper Kupped it.
Yeah.
He worked out. But
really good.
There was a couple times he did that and Stafford didn't see him. So
it does look like he's kind of playing with blinders on in some ways.
He does. And it's almost like he's overanalyzing it is what it looks like. He's too scared he's going to make a mistake that he ends up making a mistake.
Yeah.
So you can't second guess in the NFL. You just can't.
No. So, I mean, going ahead, I mean, I know we're going to be doing another episode next Monday, guys. So don't forget to tune in again. We're going to keep up as much as we can with the playoffs so you don't miss out on the fun with Sam and Maddie for the Look Back podcast. But going ahead into the playoffs and just kind of thinking about it a little bit as we go forward, I'm liking the Rams less and less to make it to the Super Bowl just based on their recent performance. I'm liking the Patriots quite a bit more. The Packers are looking fantastic. And the Bengals are going to surprise, I think, a lot of people if they can keep this up.
I agree with all of those statements. Man, as much as I hate it, like, I feel like Aaron Rodgers is really up for MVP again.
I know. I know it always goes to a quarterback, right? It's historically always gone to a quarterback, or majority of the time has gone to a quarterback. But Jonathan Taylor really deserves it. He's carried the entire season. We were talking earlier about how I don't think that, you go to a Super Bowl because you've been carried by one player, but he has carried the Colts this whole year, and he has won in
spite of Carson Wentz, which is incredible. I mean, good for him.
No, he's a legend.
Yeah. And you know what? I was pretty impressed by the Titans, but I don't feel like the Titans can't win in the trenches to make that happen.
No, but they may be getting Derrick Henry back this coming week. Maybe. I don't think it would be smart to bring him back too early.
I was going to say.
I don't think it's a good idea. I'm just saying it might happen.
Yeah.
Definitely not a good idea to me.
Gives me a little bit of anxiety.
I know. It's like, are you just doing this to pad his stats? Because, come on. Like, really? It's just.
I don't know.
It's too much.
I agree. It is too much. But I do like the Bengals, and I feel like sneaky, they may make their way in there.
Yeah, they could make their way in there. I know a lot of people would love to see, another locker room moment of Joey B with his cigar game, and his shenanigans of what he calls dancing. But
who do you feel like on the NFC side?
Oh man.
You think it's going to be the Packers?
I think it's going to be the Packers. I think that the biggest wild card is probably the AFC, and I think that it's pretty much the Packers game the other side.
You don't think that Brady can do it?
I mean, he's just down so many players right now.
Many players.
And if they had gotten a couple more wins, a couple better games in towards the end of the season, I would say clear cut it's happening. But I just think I think that he just is missing too many weapons right now.
I agree. I just kind of wanted to.
He also just doesn't look. He doesn't look like the Brady we saw at this point last season, where it was like, oh, he is fully in the zone. Like we're talking about how Stafford has these blinders where he can't see players on the field. Last year, Brady just had this full tunnel vision of Super Bowl, and right now it doesn't feel like he has that full tunnel vision.
Drive.
No, going on. It doesn't.
I agree. I don't know. I'm not an Aaron Rodgers fan, but I feel like they may be our. I think that's my NFC pick.
I think it's going to be mine as well.
What's crazy is the Cowboys have the talent to do it, and they cannot be consistent enough to make it happen.
No, their defense has looked fan-freaking-tastic, and Dak just is a couple steps behind or in the wrong direction on most plays, and it doesn't make sense.
People are going to argue with me, but Mike cannot game manage to save a game. Cannot. No. Absolutely cannot. I don't know what that timeout was about, because if they still had it, then they could have challenged that play. I don't know. Granted, they shouldn't have been in that position anyways, but I feel
time
like
management has been absolutely
awful all season. That's where they've been consistent.
He's Mike McCarthy. Maybe he just doesn't have a watch. Maybe that's his problem. Maybe his players should have gifted him a watch for Christmas.
Or a rule book.
I love it. All right, let's get to a couple more comments before we sign out. Little Box is saying, I was down 2 points on 3rd and 2 last Pittsburgh play, and Najee busts that touchdown to send me into the championship game. Najee Harris, my first pick in Dynasty, paying off. Very nice. Love it. I don't know if you also have your Najee jersey on to rep this amazing moment, but I do for you. Big claps. Love to see that. I saw it also. They were talking about I think Eli mentioned he's like winning a lot of people's fantasy leagues right now, because they mentioned that he should have taken a knee to like run out the clock and not go into the end zone.
The fantasy people are like, no, what are you talking about?
What are you doing? No, but he didn't just do that touchdown for, fantasy purposes. He did it to get another touchdown on the board for Ben. So he was doing that for the big guy, which we definitely appreciated. But any notes before we sign off on anything new you have coming out this week?
Last week I had to miss because of a volunteer event. I have not confirmed, but I think Doc and I are going to be doing the first look, which is always fun on Wednesday nights. Nice. I'm kind of bummed I won't get your article this week, but I'm excited for it to come out next week. Something to look forward to. It
will be I'm definitely over promising and probably going to under deliver, but because I have 2 weeks to write it, guys, and not just one evening, that should mean a much better article for you guys next week. So you can take it for all you Dynasty lovers out there. I'm a huge Dynasty nerd myself, so I'll be catering to those people for that stock watch.
Make some money.
Let's make you guys some money. Let's go. Let's look forward to next season. Not be so sad that this season is ending, because I don't want to think about the sadness right now.
Share your picks with us. I love getting to celebrate little wins with people.
Definitely.
Anytime you win money, that's not a little win. That's exciting.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll get some more thick sixes this week. People have been tweeting at me, and I love it. I love it.
We got to work on that merchandise. I got to work on some graphics for you so we can get
we have a homemade one over here.
I love it.
I know that Sam's is going to be balling.
No, that one's really good. That's the OG, and I think that should be the limited edition that you run like 10 of, and you should like sign and then have people bid on them. That's what
I need to send you one.
Yes, send me one. I'll send you my address.
Yes.
But thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Look Back podcast with Sam and Maddie. Check out all the other content, seasonal, and DFS tools, as well as premium access to our staff for all your fantasy sports questions in the members-only Discord right here at drroto.com. Congratulations on all your championship winners out there. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit,